Happy Thursday, everyone. It is time for another Halloween Horror Nights 31 announcement, and this time it's another IP. It was a very strange week in the rumors community, a lot of things swirling behind the scenes, but today we finally received our latest announcement for Halloween Horror Nights 31, and that is the Horrors of Blumhouse Part 3 featuring Freaky and the Black Phone. But before we received this latest announcement from Halloween Horror Nights, we also had a brand new speculation map from Horror Night Nightmares. So I do want to talk about that briefly before we get into the news, because I had quite a few of you reach out to me and ask, where's your video? So I do want to talk about that just for a bit, but otherwise, let's talk about this new Blumhouse house for Halloween Horror Nights 31. So I decided not to make a dedicated video to that speculation map for two reasons. One, because I'd already discussed the changes of seeing Stranger Things go to Evil Dead, and that final original not being Wicked Growth 2, but something to do with witches. I'd already discussed that in my Legends Collide video, so I didn't want to just rehash what I'd already talked about. But also, there's still rumors swirling. Things aren't as set as we thought they were on a particular house. And so I didn't want to discuss that map yet because something's shifting, something's changing behind the scenes. Still waiting for more information before I'm going to talk about that. Probably saw some people on Twitter or on the forums starting to chat about this, and there's chaos going on. I don't really want to talk about the map because I have a feeling that map is changing yet again. However, there was one item on that map that I hadn't talked about yet, and that was Seeds of Extinction 2. This is still the underground creatures that was on the previous map. They're just coming out and saying what we believe it to be, which is Seeds of Extinction 2. I also believe that this is where the Last of Us rumor stemmed from, or possibly they were considering a Last of Us house and shifted away from that, but kept the underground subway setting, because I have heard that part of this house takes place in a subway. I don't know if it's a prequel, I don't know if it's a sequel to Seeds of Extinction, if it really is related to Seeds of Extinction, but it does sound like we're gonna be going underground. There's gonna be some creatures of some variety, and since I love Seeds of Extinction, I would love for this to be a prequel or a sequel and to see the plants coming alive yet again. Now, the other thing the map had were scare zones, and for scare zones, I feel like the rumors are still swirling there as well. Some of what's on their list doesn't match up with what I've been given, some do, so there's overlap. There's still things changing behind the scenes, so I'm just not even gonna touch it until things feel a little more solid. It's an interesting list, I will say that much. Very interesting. So with the speculation out of the way, let's get to today's announcement, which is Horrors of Blumhouse 3. I don't even know that they're really putting the 3 on it, but for our purposes, it's number 3 for Orlando, and it's going to feature Freaky and the Black Phone. So before we dive into my thoughts on the house, let's discuss what was shared directly from Universal, the facts that we know will be featured in this house. The Horrors of Blumhouse will transport guests into an alternate dimension where the scares are real and the stakes are life or death. In The Black Phone, which hits theaters today, the Grabber is a demented magician best known for his sinister trick of making people disappear permanently. Guests will find themselves trapped in his fun house where the sound of ghostly voices whisper hints on how to escape, but guests must tread carefully to outwit and outrun the Grabber's twisted magic. So I'm gonna pause there for a moment. Let's talk about The Black Phone. So today is June 24th as of filming this. The movie just came out today. I know some people already got to see it in advanced screenings. Obviously, I have not had the chance to watch it. However, I did look up preview videos and kind of got a feel for it from those previews and trailers. This is what I've gathered on the story. The premise involves the Grabber. He is the villain in this story, and he is kidnapping teenagers in Colorado in the 1970s. So it's a period piece. It's set in the 1970s. So in the film, we follow one child who is kidnapped, taken to the Grabber's basement, and when he's in there, he finds a phone that's disconnected, but yet somehow can communicate with the other children who have gone missing in the past, and they supernaturally help him, or in theory help him, try to escape. So it's got a couple different supernatural elements to it, as well as a serial killer. Based on the mask that's in the preview, that's on the artwork for the Universal house, I can see this working for Halloween Horror Nights. The mask is definitely creepy on its own, and it's set mostly in a deep, dark basement. Very easy to make that scenic and scary. So I do believe the grabber and the black phone will be a good match for Halloween Horror Nights. So as far as new horror goes, I feel like this one is a good fit. Now, let's move on to the second property that's represented in this house, Freaky. Freaky will challenge guests to outrun serial killer The Butcher, who has switched bodies with a high school girl after being cursed by the Ladola dagger, an ancient Aztec blade. Guests will learn firsthand that looks can be deceiving as they encounter the sweet-looking teen who is actually the Butcher, and she is determined to hunt for her next victims. This movie came out a couple years ago. I haven't watched it yet. I will watch it now that it's official. I will have some Halloween Horror Nights homework. I will watch it. I did watch previews of it. Obviously, it has Vince Vaughn, who was the Butcher, and it's a comedic horror take on Freaky Friday where he accidentally switches bodies with a teenage girl, and now he's able to murder people a lot easier because he's an unassuming 17-year-old blonde girl rather than himself. Premise of the movie, funny take on Freaky Friday. I don't know how it translates to Halloween Horror Nights yet. I haven't seen it yet. I reserve the right to change my mind. It does look like from the imagery that Universal has released today that there is a mask that the Butcher wears for part of the movie at least. The previews, the clips I saw, it's all just Vince Vaughn or this 17-year-old girl. And so I don't know quite how you make that scary unless you have a lot of the Butcher wearing the mask rather than a bunch of Vince Vaughns, you know? Like, ugh, it's gonna be tough, I think. Now, I have heard from people that it has some really interesting kill scenes, but then you get into the realm of when you walk into a scene, is it just a kill scene? Are you just watching victims? It's not my favorite kind of house to walk through and just see show scenes. Now, if they go the route of having a plant where they did in The Purge in the past, where someone joins in line with you and then they get taken and killed, that's a little more interesting. But in general, I don't like watching kill scenes happen in front of me unless it's like the Body Collectors and you're getting a spine rip or something cool like that. I still need to watch the movie. Let me know in the comments down below if you think the kill scenes from that movie will translate well at Halloween Horror Nights. Going into the broader range of my thoughts on this house, we've had two Blumhouse properties in the past. Both were in Tent 3. Technically, this one is still in Tent 3. More about that in a moment. We had Blumhouse 1 featured The Purge, Sinister, and Insidious. Now that house was successful. It was a surprisingly good house. The sinister scenes to start the house were extremely scary, especially if you went at the beginning of the night when it wasn't quite dark out because your eyes couldn't adjust. Those scenes were fantastic. Purge scenes, meh. But then when we went back into Insidious, those were great, and the finale was fantastic. I think that finale was the best finale that's been in Tent 3. It was very good, lots of scares. And then Blumhouse 2 came around, and that was, I think, an error of what movies they chose, which is my fear for Freaky. Happy Death Day did not translate to our house. Concept for the movie, very interesting. Concept for a haunted house, not good. You're walking through the same scene with the same killer over and over and over. It did not work for a house. And then the second property that was in Blumhouse 2 was the First Purge. And at this point, we'd had two Purge scare zones. We had a Purge house that was supposed to be the Scream house. We'd had Purge in Blumhouse 1 and now Purge in Blumhouse 2. It was borderline The Walking Dead level of oversaturation for the Purge. I don't even remember the Purge scenes in this house. I barely remember this house. I really barely remember that house. It was not my favorite by any means. And so let's hope that Blumhouse 3 is more along the lines of Blumhouse 1 than the second one. Now let's talk about the location of this house, which, as I mentioned, is Tent 3, but Tent 3 is no longer by Men in Black. I assume that area became too much of a bottleneck with the show. It did become a mess back there. They were having to put up a fence to block people when the show let out. They had to go all the way around the lagoon to come back to the houses because there was just too much congestion. I'm sure you guys have all seen and heard the rumors that the tent was being built in the Fast and the Furious queue. So that is now the location of Tent 3 over in Fast and Furious. But I'm very curious to see the logistics of the entrances and the exits and how this location is going to work. It does look air conditioned, so that is an improvement from the old disaster queue houses. So if you're cast in that house, at least it looks like you're gonna have air conditioning just like all the other tents. So if I'm being completely honest, this is one of the houses I'm least excited for. You guys know me, I love the originals, and this is an IP, it's an IP that I've never seen. I do intend to watch both movies to prepare for the event. I don't foresee this being one of my favorite houses unless the cast just make it into something special, which can happen, you never know. Content-wise, I don't think this is going to be the strongest house that we see at Halloween Horror Nights 31. Between the two, I do expect Black Phone to be the better translation into a haunted house, and I think they have the work cut out for them in making Freaky actually be a scary portion of the house. So my main takeaway from that is I do wish we'd focus more on properties that were a good translation into Halloween Horror Nights houses rather than what movie is being released for synergy purposes, but it is a corporate event and I think we're well into this new era of having corporate decisions have a very heavy hand in choosing what houses are at Halloween Horror Nights. At that point, it's up to our art and design team to make it into something that works for the event, that's great for the event, and I am always curious to see what they will do when they're given a challenge. So that said, how do you guys feel about this latest announcement? If you're a Blumhouse fan, are you super pumped to see both of these properties or one of these properties at the event? Did you guys like the previous Blumhouse houses? What do you think of having a new house in the Fast and Furious queue? Leave me a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. So that is going to be it for today. We are on what seems to be an announcement schedule of an announcement every 2 weeks. So in theory, I'll be back in 2 weeks to discuss whatever new house announcement we have. But that said, there are rumors swirling pretty furiously behind the scenes right now. So if something big is released before then, I will be back to talk about it. So with that, stay safe, stay spooky, and I'll see you next time. Bye.